Next up on the show is Michael Goldberg, the owner of Efficient Fleets, a company that specializes in GPS tracking services. So, Michael, welcome back.
Thank you, Marc.
You know, one of my favorite things to watch on TikTok are these road rage drivers, right? So that's why I totally appreciate the cameras that are in there. So, so what's new? You've been on a few times. What did you want to hit on today? Kind of open field there.
One thing we always like to talk about are cameras. It's probably our biggest thing. We do GPS tracking. We track commercial vehicles. We track construction equipment, trailers, those sort of things. Mm-hmm. But cameras are really the kind of the hottest thing, and it probably has the biggest impact, on a company. And I'd like to talk about that and how they're helping our customers and good ways to implement them.
So the camera thing, why is it important? I mean, personal injury attorneys have to take somebody else's word for it, and then whatever. Is that part of the deal?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, for most of our customers, it's liability. It's making sure you have video in case of an accident. And so if there is one, God forbid, then you have something to show and to look at. And then, of course, hoping to prevent the accident by, keeping the drivers, safe, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh, that's a good point. So where are the cameras pointing? Are they pointing to the road, or are they pointing to the employees, to the drivers, both?
So, and you can choose. Typically you have a camera pointed at the road in front, and then you can also have one pointing at the driver, but you don't have to have one on the driver. You can just have one pointing at the road in front. And, of course, in that case, you're just going to get the front of the vehicle. And when you're doing it that way, with just a road-facing camera, then really it's a lot about, evidence in case of an accident. So you can see what happened in front of the vehicle and, kind of go from there.
You also have cameras. So I've seen one of your setups before, right, where you've got cameras pointing at different areas of like a semi or something like that, especially those big rigs. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we do also cameras around the vehicle. That's also, if you have a big truck, the bigger the truck, the bigger the target. So, and of course, you have a lot of blind spots, a lot of things you can't see around the vehicle. And so you want to put cameras on the sides and the rear so you can have coverage, in a sense, in 360 degrees. A lot of these big trucks, it's amazing. They have blind spots, and people just, maybe change a lane and run right into them. And, of course, without a camera, it's usually going to be the commercial driver's fault in that case. And but it can save them thousands and thousands of dollars in premiums.
Oh, that's a good point. Are there studies that show that if you don't have cameras to defend your position? Because I've seen camera footage, not necessarily from your cameras, but things online where people will, on purpose, run into a truck so that they could get their big payday.
Absolutely. And I don't have statistics. I'm sure there are. There's probably plenty of them. But I'll just give you a good story. One of our customers is actually based in the Valley in McAllen and Edinburgh, Texas. They are a fuel hauler. And so they have about 10 trucks that haul fuel. And they put cameras in initially because their drivers reporting people trying to do just that. They were trying to cut them off and get hit by them. And so that's, just a huge problem. You can imagine why. And so they have cameras, on the sides of the vehicle, in front, and have, to record anything. So yeah, it does happen. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, so I was a cop for 30 years, right? And I was around when we didn't have body cameras and car cameras. And now we've got all of it. And I remember when I was working internal affairs when cameras were coming out. And it was a big deal. I saw the huge positive of it because the overwhelming majority of complaints against officers are unfounded. Sure. The cop's doing the right thing. Well, when you have a camera, now you have this third-party impartial view of what's going on. And when it comes to the commercial trucking industry, for example, when they can be victims of these people that are just trying to instigate something.
Oh, yeah.
This is it's almost like body cams are for cops now. It's like required. If you don't have it, people are like, where is it, right? I would think 100%. Of that for the commercial trucking industry as well. It's not a requirement, I'm guessing, but no. I mean, how soon can they make it a requirement? It sounds like it's a no-brainer.
On the federal level, when it comes to interstate trucking, I don't know how much is being tried to be implemented. I think that's still very controversial to force it, but insurance companies are forcing it.
There you go.
So it's not so much coming from the government side as much as coming from insurance. So we have customers, unfortunately, that are, because especially in Texas with liability being so high and these nuclear verdicts that they're calling where they're having millions and millions of dollars in judgments for, in some cases, like fender benders. And they can just be astronomically high. There are some customers of ours that are either, they will not get a new insurance policy unless they get cameras. They simply won't get renewed. So they're having to put in some kind of camera or tracking system to reduce liability. Others are just seeing their rates go up. because it's just everyone has to pay the cost, and so it really kind of depends on your how bad your rates have been or how bad your drivers have been. Accident claims it really affects each individual company, but we're just seeing more and more people being forced to do it, and they're having to put them in. So yeah, insurance is playing a huge role, and especially in Texas. Other states do a little less, but.
And Michael, how does keeping truckers' logs tie into efficient fleets and what you guys do, what you provide?
That's a great question. So we do electronic logging devices. We represent a company called OmniTrax, another one called TruckX, and they are electronic ELD providers, electronic logging devices. And so we provide the service and the system for the truckers to install it.
Because that is a law, right? You do have to log.
That is a law. That's a federal requirement and a state requirement, a Texas state requirement. So if you fall within those rules, then you have to have an electronic logging device. Cameras, of course, are not required by that, but in the trucking business, especially if you're an 18-wheeler, that kind of truck, they're just very common to have them because liability is just so high. So they have both. They have the ELD and they have the camera, and of course when there's an incident, they usually want records from everything. And if you're a commercial truck driver and you have an electronic log, if you get into an accident, they're pulling your electronic logs. And they're going to take your camera video, of course. But in that sense, they can go hand in hand that way. But we provide both as a local provider for ELDs. So.
Well, how big of a deal is this becoming? Because I see cameras in personal vehicles all the time now too.
Oh yeah, we have them in ours.
So what's the trend there?
I think it's getting, I don't know the numbers either since we focus a lot on commercial. But, I think the adoption rate's probably in the 25 to 30%, maybe a little bit less than that on personal vehicles. We have them in all of our vehicles. I think it's a great tool. I tell everyone to have them because, you just never know when something happens. A lady, or I don't know if it's a lady I should say, but someone came across a parking lot and when I was at your place, Howie, and I was still officing there, and they weren't paying attention. And luckily, I put my brakes on. I had a camera in the car, thank God. But they would have run right into me, and they just simply weren't paying attention. And it was just a personal vehicle. So I think it's important. Otherwise, you have no evidence. And it can really make a big difference in for personal as well.
Well, what's insurance doing for that? Because that's again insurance. Mm-hmm. It's the money flow, right? We don't have to make a law on it. Yeah. If insurance is going to be like, look, you got to have this on there.
Yeah, I think personal. I don't think they're doing anything for it, to be honest, from what I'm understanding. It's the commercial that's getting hit hard. The last few weeks, I talked to a customer who had an accident, and they were being sued. It was a commercial case. It was minor. I think it was about $900,000 what they're being sued for. So in commercial, you're looking at $1 million almost every time, even if it's just minor. And so it really gets really, really high quickly. If they see, if it's a big truck, if they see logos on it, whatever it is, they just go after them big time because they know the policies are large. Those commercial policies are going to cover them for probably $1 million at least, and so they're getting higher. The personal one, they're less, so they can't get as much. And I think it's hard to force individuals to say, hey, you got to have a camera in your personal vehicle. So I really don't think they're getting much out of it, unfortunately. But it's just good to have because you don't.
I mean, other than the kids with their GoPros that are recording themselves speeding, right, or racing, which
trying to outrun the cops.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you never know. I mean, if you get hit by one of them, and and it's nice to know, even though it's just going to make the whole case go away much quicker because you're going to have the evidence right away without a lot of investigation, and that's what happens to our customers. If they ask me what happens if it's my fault, my guy was doing a bad thing. Well, in this case, they're going to find out anyway. It's just going to take longer to find out, and you'll be able to end it. You'll be able to end it right away. You'll be able to go in there. You'll be able to save time and money on depositions, fighting insurance. You'll know right away it was your fault. You can coach your driver, maybe make some corrections, and move on with life, and not battle for 2 years because it'll take 2 or 3 years of back and forth, and you'll. I mean, how much time and money is wasted doing that? So that's the other advantage. It helps end all that quickly.
Right.
So.
Makes sense. Well, I know that tracking is a big thing. People track on their phones. They track kids. They track each other. All these other things. But is this kind of like Big Brother, George Orwell, 1984? Is it like I know that in some countries outside the U.S., some in Europe, and some in the Far East, there's less cops on the street, but the cops are watching hundreds, if not thousands, of cameras in an area of town, and the minute something happens, there's somebody there. Is that what we're going towards?
Well, I hope not. But in this case, I don't call it big brother, I call small brother. It's your boss watching.
Okay. Small brother.
Small brother.
I like that.
And so it's not connected to anybody. These are all into each individual account for the customer. So there's the privacy is there. It's not being blasted. Nobody can just access it without permission. You have to have warrants and all those sort of things unless you give it up willingly. That's why it's just really called small brother. You're really, in this case, it's companies watching their drivers, watching their employees.
Yeah.
And doing that sort of thing. So that's really what that is. But yeah, it's
So there's a story that I have, and we could do it without company names because that company might still be my client. But I have a client that has trucks, has drivers. And so I referred him to Michael years ago. And the owner of that company said, "Oh, I don't need to track. My drivers have been with me for years. I don't need to track them. I know what they're doing, etc." And then he tried it with one truck and then expanded. But he ended up finding out some things that he had no idea were happening. And they were kind of big. They involved taking materials, being somewhere where they're not supposed to be, even though they're on the clock. Yeah. So does that happen often?
Oh yeah, it happens a lot. It's with GPS tracking, and all of our cameras, I would like to mention, have GPS trackers built into them. So it's not just a camera with that live video and that sort of thing. It's got a tracker built in, so you can use that to do everything. It's theft of services. Going off and doing side jobs. If it's a plumber, electrician, if it's landscaping. They just come back later and do it for half the price, or just do the next door guy, and cheat that way. An incident, we got a call from a customer today. It's been a long-time customer. They're a roofing company, so they got crews going around and all kinds of stuff. And this is something that I didn't think about initially when we were putting cameras in. But there was an incident on the road. Their guys, there's 3 guys in the truck, had an argument with somebody else on the highway. And so, and who's right and who's wrong. So now he's pulling back video and he's able to prove, what's wrong. And, I don't know if it's his guy's fault or the other one's fault, but either way, it's probably not too good. But now he has video. It's just like having a camera in the restaurant or in your store. If you got a crew of guys, especially a crew of people in there, you really need to know what's going on because all kinds of things happen. Drinking, doing drugs in the vehicle. That's another thing we get. They're smoking in the car, that kind of stuff. And that's really, that's just an accident waiting to happen. And so that's the other benefit. It's sort of a human resource management in mobile version of that. And so that's the other part too as well. So.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Michael, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, then go to efficientfleets.com and they get a hold of us at 888-777-4510. And they can call on person number 1 and reach me.
Sweet. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back.
As we wrap up the show, quick reminder, check out our latest podcast or catch video versions of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. That's going to be it for us for this week's. Thanks, everybody. Y'all did a great job.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again.